TNF podcast, like, comment, share, subscribe, click on that bell for notifications. And if you're listening on Spotify, give us a follow. That would be fantastic. All right, some upcoming shows we got for you on the 22nd, which is a Wednesday at 8 p.m. That time might change. We got Michael Regilio. He's a very funny stand-up comedian from Los Angeles. On the 26th, that's a Sunday, we're going to have Kelly from the Sisterhood blog. That's going to be on not blog, zine. That's going to be on at 5 p.m. Eastern time. That's a Sunday. And then we've got Rebecca Lohr, the hardcore cheerleader. That's going to be on the 2nd of February at 5 p.m. Eastern time. And as you can see there at the bottom, I've got a merchandising company, Hell's Heart Merch Co. You go to hellsheartco.bigcartel.com. Use the code 20 for 20% off your entire order, and I'll throw up some samples here at the end. My next guest today, we had a lot of mutual friends, and I want to thank Joe Bando for setting this one up because he's been doing me a lot of favors, and he's out there killing it in LA. He's doing a great job with his stand-up routine. And we more mutual friends, also Don Foos says hello. Don Foos from Spud Monsters, Run Devil Run, One Life All In. Ladies and gentlemen, the bassist of Chimaira, Mr. Jim Lamarca. What's going on, my man?
Hello.
hello. What you been up to today?
What's that?
What you been up to today?
Just hanging out. It's kind of really bad weather going on here in Northeast Ohio. It's about to hit, I don't know, like -2 or something like that. And
holy shit!
Yeah, it's been snowing literally since the beginning of the new year here. I mean, it's just nonstop.
Kayla Pierce says, "Hi, Mini Jim, showing love too."
Yeah, got him in the background there.
Hello.
Oh, there he is. Yes, -2. Yeah. So, did you grow up in Ohio?
I did. Yeah, what do you call it? My parents, we're all from Cleveland, and I actually was born in Erie, Pennsylvania, but I was about a year old when we moved back to Cleveland. I got a job back here in Cleveland, and we moved back here. So, but I was born in Pennsylvania, but I've been in my whole life in Ohio.
But you claim Cleveland, of course, man.
Oh,
yeah, definitely.
Cleveland. Definitely. Cleveland.
So my first question that I always have for the musical guests that are on here was like, what was your earliest exposure to music, and like, how did you get into like hardcore? How did you get into metal?
Yeah, so I saw this 25-piece orchestra. My cousin, I think it was a cousin's band that they had the orchestra, and we took I think it was my great aunt actually. We went and saw her. Or we took her to this. It was event, like it was like kind of wedding event type of thing, but not a wedding. It was on a Sunday, and went and saw this band. And I sat and watched the drummer the whole time, and it was pretty cool. Like it was very cool for me. And as a kid, I saw this big orchestra band, and it was probably the first time I actually saw live music, and I was probably about 6 years old. So, and it was cool because I didn't know how much I liked music because I grew up playing sports and stuff like that, and I wasn't into music as much as I was until I got a little older, and kind of just started discovering bands. And my buddy Frank, he actually, he was the one that I kind of got into with all the like a lot of the metal bands that. Oh, sorry, sorry. He had a cassette tape collection, and they were a lot of bootleg cassette tapes and stuff like that. And they basically had, this band, bands like Venom, Slayer, Metallica. But I was going into the story about Monty Connor and the guy that signed us at Roadrunner. And, it was a band called Cyrith Ungol. And they were just like, I don't know how to explain the type of band they were from back in the day, but they were just really cool. Like a lot of cool album covers or actually tape cassette covers. And it was really cool to see these bands and like see these cassette tapes, and like you'd read through them and you're like, wow, man, there's a lot of information on these cassette tape inlays and stuff, and you're like, what bands do they like? Are they friends with this band and whatnot? And it's like, what band is this? Like, okay, Megadeth. Well, wait a minute, Megadeth. Wait a minute. Then you kind of had to read into some of these magazines and kind of get into the idea of like the history of them without Google searching, without all that stuff. Like you had to kind of get into the whole, you know, it's basically a, you know, it was like it was zine magazines, you know, like back in the day, and you know
Sure.
that was more hardcore. But the metal bands, like you know, you'd read like Rip magazine or you know Metal Edge magazine, Metal Maniacs, all those types of magazines, and you know, as I started working, you know, I started being able to afford to buy those magazines, and I, you know, I'd get the posters in them, you know, and just get into the bands that were very, you know, much of the time frame of getting into that music that were like, you know. But the funny thing is, it's like all those bands back in the day, I always thought they were a lot bigger. Not saying that they weren't big, but they were bigger. They were bigger to us as into that music. They were bigger to us you know, than they
They
actually
actually
were.
were. Right.
Yeah, that's cool though because you know that's why they became these iconic, you know, figures in our life, you know, and like we always grew up wanting to be like that, you know, like even when we didn't know what we were doing playing music, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I had that experience too, where I looked at a lot of bands, especially hardcore bands, and you know, you look up to them and you think they're like, you know, superstars or anything. But I remember one of the first bands that I saw that was in the hardcore scene, Stretch Armstrong. Those guys were school teachers. And I was like, oh wow, that's crazy. You know, like I didn't think they would have to work like a day job. You know, I didn't conceptualize hardcore and punk rock in that way, you know. So yeah, it's pretty wild. Now, did you play like an instrument in like school or anything? And how did you kind of get hooked up with playing bass?
Oh wow, that's crazy. I played the in fourth grade, I think it was. It was there was not a piccolo, but it was like a flute, you know, like you know, and like they, you know, they came in this package, and you know, like you had to kind of learn, you know, how to read music, and I was like, ah, this is stupid, you know, I wasn't into it at all. I don't think maybe it was fourth grade. I don't remember what grade it was. Um, but I moved in sixth grade, so when I moved to a different suburb city from where I was growing up, I just was playing baseball. Like I just played baseball the whole, you know, growing up. So I didn't really get into music until about, I don't know, like seventh grade-ish, you know, and I'll never forget my buddy Frank, if he's watching this, he'd laugh because I'm mentioning him again. But his birthday, he got a Bon Jovi "Slippery When Wet" tape, and I was just, you know, like it wasn't really the music we were into, but it was like I remember like he got that cassette tape, and I forget what else, but like it was kind of like, you know, we were kind of getting into all the different types of bands at that point, like the metal bands and whatnot. But the thing is, the mainstream type bands were kind of the ones that were more accessible. Like, you know, you got that for your birthday. You weren't getting a Cyrus Ungul tape for your birthday in seventh grade, you know?
Right.
So, you know, you basically just had to kind of figure out, you know, all that whole, you know, gist of metal and whatnot, you know, like the new
Sure.
stuff and like Anthrax and, you know, all those types of bands. Like, you know, this is in the 80s. So it's like, you know, Kiss was big, you know, like all the MTV stuff was big, you know, like, you know, MTV was kind of a big influence as well. Like, I mean, it was definitely it was basically, you know, all the pop stuff, and you know, you're like, okay, cool, and then you know, eventually Headbangers Ball came out and all that kind of stuff, and you're like, wow, okay, this is way cooler than that crap, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So um so are you like a self-taught bassist then, or are you?
Well, that's a funny story. I went into I we my buddy Frank and them, we had a friend of ours. His name was Nick, and he basically brought his guitar over with an amplifier to my buddy Frank's house, and he started jamming. And we're like, yeah, let's start a band, dude. You know, this is great. So there was like 4 or 5 of us, and none of us had guitars or anything like that. You know, we're probably like 13 years old. But we went out into the back of my buddy Frank's house, and like, you know, we all like, here, wear this T-shirt. Like he had some T-shirts and stuff, and we basically stood on top of this sewer drain big thing, and you know, kind of like did our first kind of picture of like trying to be in a band and whatnot. And then drew stuff, you know, like we kind of drew a lot of stuff back then. We actually played like Dungeons and Dragons and
Oh
that.
shit.
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy, so it was a lot of. I mean, this is the days before, like, I mean, there's no computers. I mean,
No
Atari.
TikTok.
Yeah, none of that stuff. No TikTok, nothing. And the funny
Yeah,
thing
yeah.
is, it's like, you just had to be creative and had to do things, and
Right.
it was definitely a lot different then.
Yeah. Not to
But
say that,
bass, going back to bass, so go ahead.
yeah.
Sorry, but
Well, I was going to say, not to say that this generation isn't creative, but they definitely got a different set of tools at their disposal. Like way more kind of lo-fi, like growing up. Where, yeah, like you said, D&D, man, like that was something that I didn't get into for a long time. But it's a lot more. It's a lot more personal than video games. It's a little bit more interactive, and you definitely have to use your imagination more to be able to play the game. So
yeah,
I think that's something that's kind of lacking in today's culture.
I have heard some interesting things about these kids nowadays. How they're like actually going back to malls, and like they're actually like going to, and people are spending time at malls to kind of like socialize and whatever, and they're basically learning things that they have.
Socialization
Yeah,
skills, yeah.
right. Instead of sitting online and playing with their friends on their
Fortnite.
Fortnite. Right, right.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
so,
Oh yeah.
so yeah, back to base.
So we started another band after that fake band. I wouldn't say fake band, but the startup band, and the the band that I played in, my buddy Ed. He basically was like, you play. I told him we were in like ninth grade or something. He's like, do you play guitar? I'm like, yeah, I play guitar. So we're in the in school, and I'm like, yeah. He's like, where do you live? He's like, I live down the street. I'm like, oh, sweet. So I'll come over. Went over his house. I brought my crappy like $26 guitar over to his house, and we started jamming. And he'll always say this too. He says, you weren't really that good. You kind of bullshitted me, but you definitely had rhythm. And I was like, yeah, okay, cool. So what are we gonna do? He's like, well, I got this bass, and it was like a Sears bass or something. And we started learning songs and started going over there, and we had a drummer, and another one of our friends played bass, and it just was hard to piece it together. Like, it was like, what are we doing wrong here? Like, well, we were gonna play a first gig at his parents' house on New Year's Eve. Well, it was crappy weather like this, and the drummer's like, I'm not driving the drums over there. I mean, it was before we had any licenses, and like we didn't have nobody drove and anything like that, so it was always relying on our parents. And we call him up like, hey, you coming over? He's like, my mom won't drive the drums over here. We're like, all right, dude. We're like, whatever. So then we call the guitar player, and he's like, I can't come over here. It's too cold out. I'm like, whatever. So we played the songs that we rehearsed, and it was like Christmas break. We played like it was, just jamming the whole time, and we're just like, how are we gonna do this? How are we gonna do this? And then all of a sudden, none of those guys showed up. So the show went on. So we played like our first set, if you will, and we played, I don't know, Suicidal Tendencies, La Bamba. I'm trying to think of another song that we probably played back then, but the songs went well. And I remember there was like probably like 10, 15 people in his basement. We got done and we walked around the block, and I was like, dude, this is awesome. We need to do this. We need to do this. And we were like, my fiance is watching. I'm just going to let her know that I'm not drinking pop. I'm drinking an iced tea. So we're getting married in the summer. And
Congratulations.
Thank you. I had to quit drinking soda.
Oh,
I need to look.
Not me, sir.
Yeah. A bubbly?
But wait, no, it was a sun drop. It's
okay.
It's a Carolina thing.
Gotcha.
But you called it pop, though.
Yeah. She's from New Jersey, and she's like, what do you mean pop? I'm like, it's pop, soda pop.
I grew up in Montana for about 7 years of my life, and they called it pop there too.
Oh,
And
really?
They were like, you want a pop? I'm like, a what? And they're like, a pop. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. Like, that's whenever I first moved there, and they were like, oh, they showed me a Pepsi. I'm like, oh, you mean a soda? I was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
Yeah. It's funny because it's one of the guys in El Nino. That's a funny story. Roger, when we first started touring with them, he goes, he's like, yeah, man, I wonder if they got any pop backstage. And he's like, bro, he's from New York. He goes, bro, you say that in my neighborhood, they'll kill you. I go, okay. So
It sounds like something your grandparents would say. Like
yeah,
my
yeah.
my grandmother always referred to jeans as dungarees. I'm
Oh,
like, what the
yeah.
fuck are dungarees?
Well, yeah. Well, old school couch is called the Davenport. You ever heard of that term?
No.
Yeah, that's like you can go through all that stuff. That's what I do at the barber shop. That's when I'm cutting somebody's hair, like
Yeah,
especially an older person. We'll go through all those old terms and stuff like that.
that's amazing. So like, what you talk about this band, I guess would this have been like your first like proto band before Chimera, or did you have any other projects before that?
No, this was yeah. Oh yeah, we had projects before that. This is just like it. You basically friends went to college, and my best friend Ed, he went to college, and like he had to like what are we gonna do? That's where kind of Mark came in. My singer Mark came in. Like we're like actually that's a way longer story, but the thing was sorry, can you hear all
No,
that
you're
noise in
good.
the background?
No, 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 you're
Oh,
good.
okay, good. Anyways, um what were you saying?
Well, like as far as like proto bands before like Chimera, like did you have anything else as far as like,
So yeah,
like a high
yeah.
school punk rock band?
My high school band was a metal band. We sounded like Metallica. After that, like right around '95, we started playing. Mark started playing drums for my high school band because our drummer committed suicide, and that's a whole nother story. And it's like Mark came into the picture. Then we were always friends, but we always jammed together, and like I'd walk my guitar encased in my guitar amp over to his house, and we jam. And the history of it's pretty damn long, and what happened was we started playing in the different types of like shows that we were doing back then, and it kind of all stopped after our drummer committed suicide. So literally after all that happened, I had this urge to keep on going, and basically after that, we started getting into hardcore bands and like bands like Ringworm and Integrity, and bands were from Cleveland, like One Life Crew,
Yeah.
all those types of bands that were very much the inspiration for us to keep something
Keep
going,
going.
make something happen.
Yeah.
Because once I found out bands like Ringworm, I'm like, these guys are from Cleveland. And I'm like, no, they're from North Olmsted, which is like the next couple of suburb cities over. I'm like, what? These guys sound like this and they're from here? Wow. I mean, I was shocked, like I
Yeah.
couldn't believe that this was like Cleveland, especially like in that era, like, the grunge stuff started coming out and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, it's like a scene like of music, Los Angeles, New York, whatever. What other these cities, like as you do your research of these bands, you're like, where are these bands from? Where are they, what are they, how, is there a scene? Like, yeah, there's a scene. Like Seattle has a scene. So Cleveland had a scene, and I didn't realize it, in high school because I wasn't going to shows a lot. I was going to shows, but it's just, you'd read this thing called Scene Magazine, and you read it and you're like, wow, that's cool. Then you try to go to a show, but like, yeah, it's school, you had all this work, all that kind of stuff. So you don't really get a chance to go to see everything, But
Right.
then, as I got out of high school, like bands like, one of the coolest experiences, speak of Don Foos, this is a great story. I went to see Pantera. It was a Pantera Sepultura and Biohazard,
Oh shit.
and I saw that guy, and I was like, "Wow, this is great!" And all was Phil Ansamo. He said, "He goes, yeah, I just want to give a shout out to our Cleveland boys, you know." And I was like, "What?" And he said, "Don Foos and Spud Monsters," and I go, "Wait, he knows them?"
I
I
didn't
was
know
like,
he knew him.
"Whoa, that's what's that?"
I didn't know that he knew them.
You know what, I think they might have toured in Europe together or played some festivals over there. I don't know. You
Okay.
probably have to ask Don that story. But Don, I was like, holy shit, this band's awesome. Like I gotta look, get a cassette tape of them, right?
Yeah.
Well, eventually went into barber college in about 1995, and for some reason I was just sitting outside, probably smoking a cigarette or something outside the front of the barber college, and Don Foose comes driving by on a I don't know, like a 10-speed or something like that, and I'm like, holy shit, there he is, right? I stop him, like, hey, dude, Don, what's up? Like, I'm like, yeah, I'm in barber college here, so. He's like, yeah, I always drive by here. I don't know if he got his hair cut there or not before, but he
I was
came
gonna say,
in.
did you cut that luxurious hair of his?
No, I did. Well, I didn't because I didn't know how to do flat tops back then. So
Oh,
he came in and I was like, I'm like, yeah, this guy can give you a flat top. And he came and got a flat top. And I was like, just sat there and awestruck about this guy. I was like, man, this is so cool. Like, holy shit, this is awesome. Like, this guy's in barber college. I'm like, wow, and it's like, when you're younger and that stuff's very impressionable. Like when you see these people that of, and then they're cool,
yeah,
and they're like really cool. And like, a lot of those bands like the Spud Monsters, Integrity, One Life Crew, Ringworm, all those guys were part of us asking them what they did to do what they were doing back in the day. I always wanted to get
sure.
that information and learn, and be like, okay, I actually talked to James from Ringworm before I joined Chimaira, because I was like, man, I was in this other band with my buddy Ben and and Brad and the guys from this band called Switched, and I was like, man, these guys, I don't know if I don't want to leave this band, but these bands, I kind of love the metal stuff more. It's kind of my thing, but we were in a band together for 5 years. It was a very tough decision, and I asked James, I said, hey, dude, like, what should I do? Like, he's like, you got to do what's in your heart, basically. You got to do what you want to do, what you want to be in this. It was very, very tough decision for me at that time, but I had to make a decision. And I actually have a
Sure.
CD that I have that I was listening to at the time of both bands that I was in. I'm like, this is more radio stuff, this is more the metal stuff, and I went the metal route because just it just was in my heart.
Just spoke to you more. Yeah,
It
definitely.
did, yeah, it did.
And you brought up OLC. Mr. Tony Pine says Jimmy's a fruit.
What's up,
Said you're
dude?
talking trash. So
Yeah.
now, as far as like the formation of Chimaira, and it's interesting, we also have another mutual friend. I didn't mention this to you backstage, but John Marino, who I guess did some guest vocals on one of your albums.
John Marino. That's
Yeah.
What's his name? He played with
Outcry was a
yeah.
yeah.
I don't know him as well. I do know him, but I don't know him. I think he was friends with Mark, my singer, more, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but yeah,
Okay.
yeah. In fact, that's the 25th anniversary of the first EP that we did. And what do you call it? I think he did some stuff on there, right? I believe he did.
He did some, I guess, some backup vocals or something like that. And I didn't believe him. He said, like, he's like, oh, I'm on a Chimaira record. I was like, bullshit. And he was like, I swear to you, it was the first album. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh shit, like, and he's been on this show. He's a good friend of mine. And if you're listening, John, I love you, brother. He's responsible for helping me get into the Actors Union. He gave me a place to stay when I was in Charleston trying to get qualified out there. So, yeah, I couldn't believe that. And so like you decided to go the metal route, right? And then, what kind of happened? How did the band form?
Well, they formed the band. So I wasn't in the band originally, but actually they their first original bass player, AE, he was the I think he went away to college. I think that was what happened. And then they got a replacement bass player. His name was Rob. And I don't think things worked out with them. And they needed me to come down. They're like, hey, come down and record, because they did a song for a Cleveland compilation CD. And, they need a bass player. I'm like, yeah. And I've been friends with Mark for so long. And basically it was kind of like, that's where that whole point of me being in both bands, I was like, like, oh man, like they got me to come down there. Mark got me to come down there. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I'll come and jam. Oh, we actually did a hardcore band called Skipline in between. So I forgot to mention that, but that's how we had. But then that band, we ended up doing a mini tour. The first time we ever played out of Ohio, and we went and played a show in Providence, Rhode Island, and then somewhere in Massachusetts. I can't remember the name of the city. but our van got ripped off, and the band basically had to end from that point on. And
Oh
it
shit.
was kind of like, like we had all this stuff going, and all this stuff. We put all this eggs in all this one basket with the band, and all of a sudden that happened.
Damn.
So, anyways, that's kind of how the history of me and Mark and them kind of bringing me into the picture. And I'm like, they got me to record that song, and I was like, man, I love this. This is what I miss this. And
Yeah.
the band I was in at the time was trying to get heavier, and it was like, we sounded like Korn, and I looked like the bass player. I'm like, this is not gonna work. And not that it wasn't gonna work. I'm like, I look too much like Fieldy.
Right,
So,
right. And so I think you had said you were talking about this before, but like, how did you guys kind of catch the attention of Roadrunner? And was it Carl Severson at Roadrunner? Because I know like he was a big push behind Nickelback, which was crazy because I don't know if you know about Carl Severson, but he ran Ferret Records.
yeah. He signed
Eh,
us to Ferret after we left Roadrunner.
Oh, that's
Um,
right. You guys did albums on Ferret. That's
yeah.
right.
The no, Kevin Estrada is the one that kind of discovered us that through Roadrunner, and then that was kind of the transition to Monty, and Kevin was in Los Angeles, so we kind of had that whole connection out there, and Los Angeles was kind of like our place to, like the funny thing about our band is like we kind of, people when we first started thought we were from New England, okay, because we did a bunch of stuff. Our the East Coast Empire Records was out of New England, and
Right.
we kind of blew up in that area. And basically, all the all that area was like, oh, we start playing shows. People are like, "You from New England?" No, we're from Cleveland. What? Then we started doing some stuff out in Los Angeles and hitting the West Coast, and people thought we were from Los Angeles. We're like, no, we're from Cleveland. I'm like, what? Like, the internet was kind of brand new at that time, but it was like, like you didn't do as much research at the time, back then. There wasn't that much information to get.
Sure.
You still had to kind of do the roots of it, but we're street team people. We're doing all that, helping all that out and getting you, pumped up and out, in certain areas and whatnot. So, but yeah, I think I'm kind of spilling everything all over the place here.
No, 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 you're good. And so with Roadrunner, I remember when I was in my second band at the time, Deathblow, we were I always used to hang out with the drummer at his house, and he showed me a video of whenever you guys did your video for Power Trip. And I was like, holy fucking shit, this band is awesome, And like, how kind of was the reception once you guys landed on Roadrunner? Were you guys like, did you guys like catapult into the stratosphere? Because I remember seeing you guys on like every like major metal tour like at
Well,
that time.
not necessarily right off the rip, because we had Pass Out of Existence that came out first, and that was kind of our intro to Roadrunner. After being on East Coast Empire, we're kind of more hardcore, not deathcore, but like metalcore, if you want to call it that back then. I don't know, whatever you want to call it, but that record came out, and we were kind of labeled in the new metal genre, and we were basically kind of coming out with a lot of the friends bands, like bands like Spine Shank, and hitting up both these, a lot of these. They took us out on tour, and we did a lot of this stuff back in the day, but it really didn't do that well. But it definitely it got a lot of attention. Like guys like Kerry King, like was like, he's like,
Holy shit.
yeah, he likes our Pass Out record. Like he had a Pass Out sticker on his guitar case, one of his guitar cases, or his guitar boat.
Whoa.
And I got video of it or a picture of it somewhere, and I'm like, so I don't know how he like, I don't know who introduced us to him, but it was amazing to find out that like him and a lot of these older type
Old
of
school, yeah.
older bands. I shouldn't say older bands, but bands that are a little kind of above our genre, whatever, a couple of years ahead of us, were into us, and we're like, wow, that's crazy, like that's cool. Like,
Yeah.
how do they know about us? So at the same time, you're just like shocked at that, but like that's always like it's like a kindling, it's like that kind of stuff gets into that fire, and you're like, okay, boom, keep on going. You know what? When you just keep on kind of pushing that. But then after that first record, it was not that it was a failure, but like it really didn't blow up like how we thought it was. So we went home, and Roadrunner told us to go home, and we're like, no, we're gonna stay out on the road. And we stayed on the road, did a couple more tours, and then went back in to record the Impossibility of Reason, which there was a lot of anger. Like, okay, so we now, like, everything that was told to us was like, yeah, you guys are gonna be millionaires, this and this and that. Everything's gonna be big rock stars. Okay, cool. You know, this is great. This is gonna be awesome. And then it didn't happen that way. But at the same time, that anger, but like that driving force was like, what do you got to do to keep it going? You know,
Right.
and that was kind of that was kind of keeping us, motivated to keep on going. And then the Impossibility came out, and it was just metalcore, So
Yeah.
it was fire, it was just boom, like here we are, this is kind of how we are, and that whole that time frame was very much the how do I put it? It was more like the like we did Ozfest, we did all these different things, a lot of different tours. Slayer took us out, and I mean it was amazing. You know,
How did you feel
absolutely.
though about that? Like as far as whenever you noticed that Kerry King had the sticker and then you're touring with Slayer and Kerry's like a big fan of you guys, how did that make you feel?
Well, it was
Was it
I
surreal?
yeah, it was surreal because I remember I told the guys in Slayer this story. I said my great grandfather came up from Florida one time to stay with us, and after my great grandmother passed away, and he came up and he was with us, and he stayed in my bedroom, and I had all these posters on the walls. One of them was like Slayer, it was like just big Slayer poster.
Oh God.
And my great grandfather woke up in the morning. He's like, I couldn't sleep last night. He's like, all the people staring at me last night, all the posters. Like, what the hell's going on in this room? So, it was funny because, I tell those guys in Slayer that story, and they're just like, that's cool. So, in retrospect, it was kind of like, the big circle of life, in that whole thing. Like, wow, here's our here's my great grandfather. Doesn't know anything about Slayer or anything like that, but like, yet I'm telling these guys who my idols, that my great grandfather's like, you guys scared the shit out of him. What, you couldn't go to sleep because everyone's staring at him. It was Slayer.
Right. Which is so
So
weird because like, I guess Tom Araya is a Catholic, which
yes,
is so bizarre to me. Like,
yeah,
all the imagery that they have in their artwork and everything, and I guess he's like a devout follower or something. That's weird to me.
yeah, and that's the thing. Like too, like you think you look at all those band covers and stuff like that back in the day, and it's like, when you meet the bands like that, like a Slayer band, like those types of bands like that.
They're always the nicest guys.
They're the night. Oh, dude, I can't even tell you how nice they were. They let me and my guitar player Matt stay on their crew bus.
Oh wow.
Because we were in an RV at the time, and there was like probably like 12 of us on an RV. So we got, they had some spare bunks, so we stayed on the bus and sitting there playing. Oh God, what was that game? ATX, the the 4-wheeler game, like back in the day. It was
Yeah.
like dirt bikes and all that stuff like that, or football, Madden. We're playing
Yeah.
these games. I'm like, wow, these guys are just like big kids, like
Yeah.
and they were cool as hell. Like they were just so nice, and you're like, you think of the imagery of these bands, and you're like, wow, these guys, look at that. You look at the Hello Waits cover, and then you're playing, video games with them. You're like, okay, this is weird. You know
They're
what I'm
just
saying?
dudes. Yeah.
So I got a funny story about that. When I opened up my barber shop in 2018 in the city that I'm in, um, my singer Mark was doing photos for the city of Medina where we live, and he was doing them for the Chamber of Commerce. So the ladies from the Chamber of Commerce came to hang out. He's like, "Yeah, come check our show out. This is great. It was our first time playing in 7 years, right?" So the ladies came to the show, and I met him. I'm like, "I'm opening up a business. I'm going to be joining the Chamber of Commerce. This is great, right?" It's like totally like this huge networking thing
Yeah.
before we played the show. So we play the show, and afterwards we're like, you guys aren't the same people. That's just the weirdest thing. You guys are so nice. You guys look like you're having fun, but like you play this aggressive music, like it's like the most aggressive music, but you guys are the nicest guys. Like, that's the kind of perception, like, and I think that's kind of a cool thing. I'm very accessible at my barbershop, and there's guys that come in my barbershop, 85-year-old guys. You think they know anything about my band? They know nothing. Just make sure
Yeah.
my sideburns are even, and make me look good because my wife's yelling at me because I need to get my hair cut.
That's glorious. It's glorious. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's weird. I saw it was a meme. I've mentioned this on the show before where it was like hippies are or no, is hardcore and metal guys are nice people cosplaying as angry people, and hippies are angry people cosplaying as nice people. And I can't help but think that
That's kind of
it's because,
interesting.
well, I can't help but think it is because like the music kind of gets out some of the aggression, and that's like your way of kind of processing and dealing with things is like either playing or going to a show and like dancing or singing along or whatever, and then it's like you get all that negative energy out and you're just like on the surface and below you're like a good person.
And that's funny because this last summer we played the Incarceration Festival. And it was the first festival we played in I don't know how many years. I forget how many years, maybe like 14 years or whatever it was. And the week before, my dad wasn't he wasn't gonna make it. Wasn't doing too well. And like I called the guys up, and I called my keyboard player Chris up, and I was like, because he's flying in from Vegas, and I'm like, hey, I don't think my dad's gonna make it. He's like, well, if you don't want to play the show, you don't have to play the show. Don't worry about it. I'm like, dude, I need the show. You know what I'm saying? I need this show. I need to play. And my fiance came into town, and like we had such a great time, knowing that what the next week was going to happen. Like my like what was going to be happening. It was something that like I needed, and I need to be in front of those people and play. Like I didn't need to sit at home and not. It would have made things worse if I would have sat at home.
Right.
I needed that show. I needed to be in front of those people. And with my fiance, and we had such a great time that weekend. And the next week sucked. It was the worst week ever. But at the same time, my dad was the type of person that was like, like go to work, go to get a job. You're not going to go to college. You're going to have to go to work. Get a professional type of job. Go weld. And then he's like, go be a barber. That type of thing was like how my dad was. Like, you got to keep on going on. You just keep on pushing. Life ssucks, but guess what? Tough shit.
You just got to keep getting up and
Right.
going at it. Yeah.
Right.
Johnny from Seventh Star, they were telling me that he was telling me that his grandmother was in the last stages of her life, and they got the opportunity to go tour with Agnostic Front. And he said that his grandmother told him, like, look, you need to do this. You need to do this. This will be good for you. And, he had her blessing, and they went out and toured with Agnostic Front for a few weeks, and then she passed, and I talked to him about it, and he said, you know what, like she was proud of me for what I did. So there was no
Have you
loss.
seen that documentary about them?
About Seventh Star?
No, I'm sorry, Agnostic
Oh,
Front.
Agnostic Front. Yeah, I just watched it actually because Mike Gallo was on there. Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
And
so
I didn't know
good.
I didn't know so much about Roger. The only story that I'd ever heard about him was that he and his father actually had to go to the park in New York and catch pigeons in order to eat and survive and stuff. And I didn't know the whole story about like his mother shooting his father and all this other crazy stuff. Like to talk about a broken home, man.
But you know what though? Look at those guys. They're freaking legends. And you know what, Vinny? Those guys have always been awesome. Anytime I've ever met them, they've been cool. But Vinny, he's one of the best dudes ever. Like, love him. He's like the best guy. And like I broke down pretty hard with him. Like we played a Stillborn Fest with Hatebreed and Gnostic Front, Stick of It All. I think Madball. God, there was a bunch of bands on it. It was like about a 3 to 5 day run, And like Vinny was just like, oh my God, this is the best guy ever. Like, like he was so cool. And
oh yeah,
I think I gave Roger, or somebody gave Roger one of our shirts, and he wore it for a long time.
No
and
shit.
Then next time I saw him, he's like, someone stole my freaking shirt, my Chimaira shirt. I'm like, what? I'm like, you wore it? I'm like, he's like, I wore it on stage all the time. I'm like, damn, dude, that's awesome.
That is awesome.
Really, it's surreal. Like, like I'm saying, like the hardcore bands are kind of the bands that like started getting into the New York bands when I was younger, and all those types of bands were very much the how do I put it? They're very that scene was it's amazing. That whole New York scene, and it was very awesome, to bro down with those dudes and be like, these guys are so cool, and like
Yeah.
Vinny, he's got the Steelers thing. I'm like, fuck the Steelers. He's like, what are you? I'm like, I'm from Cleveland. I'm a Browns fan. He's like, the Browns suck. I'm like, oh, okay, I know they suck,
Chubbs has that shirt where it says, "I like the Browns, but they suck."
Yeah, it's a great shirt.
Wait,
Yeah.
you were mentioning baseball. Who's your team? I guess the Guardians, right?
No, I'm not. I stopped being a Guardians fan. Once they changed the name, I was done. I'm
You're
done.
done. Who'd you
Yeah,
start pulling for?
I'm a Cleveland sports fan. I'll talk to you about sports. I love baseball as my favorite sport. When they changed the name, I said, I'm done with this shit. I don't care anymore. And they're a good team. I still follow baseball. My son last year played on the Yankees, and we got Yankees hats. And I'm like, you know what? I've always hated the Yankees. My fiance is from New Jersey, and her family is Yankees fans. And I'm like, I'm very much I like baseball so much. I hated the Yankees for so long, but now I actually like them. And I'm like, you know what? Until the Indians change the name back to the Guardians change the name back to the Indians, I'm not going to be a fan. So that's just my opinion, So
I heard they're supposed to change it back, though.
That's what I heard. I mean, the Redskins guy, I think the Native American, some Native American coalition group, they're suing the Redskins. They're like, well, you never asked us our opinion. If
They wanted it.
They wanted the name. They wanted.
Yeah.
No Native Americans aren't offended by those names. They're honored by it. And
Right.
these idiots that want to cancel that, it's like, dude, seriously? Like, it's a name. It pays honor. Right. The Indians pays honor to the first Native American ball player.
Right.
And you're changing
exactly.
that?
Yep.
And there was always, this thing. It's like, well, is it that offensive? It's offensive to maybe 5
white women.
Yeah. And
liberal white women.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. So I'm not a fan. And LeBron James, he ruined basketball for me. Because he left Cleveland again. I was like, you know what? You leave Cleveland again, you're from Akron, whatever, dude. I don't care. I'm done with you. But you know what, though? You gave me. I was telling a kid at the mall yesterday. I said, you know what? You gave us. My son and I went to the mall. He wanted to get a jersey, and I was like, I was talking to one of the guys, and I'm like, he's got a basketball jersey. I'm like, yeah, I don't like basketball anymore. I'm like, he's like, why? The Cavs are doing great. I'm like, yeah. I go, the 2016 was the best season in basketball. I've watched every game. The Cavs won the championship that year. It was like the 7-game series. It was amazing. Said it'll never get better than that. And I grew up watching Jordan and all those guys, and it's just not the same anymore,
Right. Yeah.
I only like football now, really, at the end of the day.
You do or you don't?
I love football. My son,
football.
He's really into football right now, and we're watching a lot of these games, and it's pretty cool. It's a fun thing, especially. I think there's a game on tonight. There's a game on right now, but
who's playing? Is Cleveland playing tonight?
No, the Cavs. No, are you the Browns?
Yeah.
No, Browns have been done. I think they're
done.
3 games.
I don't follow. I love Raiders swag, and if you're interested, you're watching. I got the Hell's Heart Raiders mocks here.
Yeah, that's cool. I like them.
Yeah. But I don't really follow it closely. I kind of like the imagery of it and everything. Yeah. So back to Chimaira, what we were talking about. Like, what do you think was like your favorite tour, or like, I always ask people these kind of questions, like what was your most interesting or craziest tour story ever?
I mean, favorite tour, man, that's a tough one, but
or favorite bands to tour with.
If I give you a top 3, something like that. Okay. Probably Slayer #1. That was probably the coolest tour. I watched them every night. Like, I could not watch that show.
Sure.
I was really into it. Like, in fact, the crew guys, we can be good friends with them. That previous story about us, sharing the crew, staying on the crew bus and whatnot. That was probably the craziest, coolest tour, because watching them every night and watching the Slayer fans just beat the crap out of each other every night, I was like, man, this is crazy. And one of the craziest shows was in Atlanta. Like, I remember walking back outside the back of the venue. It was called the Tabernacle. And I remember walking outside the back of the venue. I don't know, going back to the bus, and like this door just gets slammed open. And I'm like, all of a sudden this dude just, like, they threw this dude out on the staircase thing, and you know, it's going down the stairs, and it was like a fence. They threw him into it. He starts flipping over, and they start pushing him out. I'm like, and then another dude comes out, and they start. I mean, they were just, it must have been massive fights or whatever was going on, but it was just unbelievable. I was like, wow, this is crazy. Slipknot was another tour that was probably, that's another band I was just amazed on the production, the just the 9 guys in a band. Like, I mean, we had 6 guys in our band. It's like there's 3 more in that band, but watching them every night, and their performance was just fire every night. I was like, wow, this is great.
Oh yeah.
That was just unbelievable to watch. There was a lot of bands that, you know, we toured with that are friends with. Like, I will tell you right now, though, my favorite thing that I ever did was the cruise that we just did with Lamb of God. That was probably my favorite thing.
Oh wow.
Yeah, because I got engaged on that on the cruise ship. We got engaged, and that's a whole crazy story in itself. But we just, my fiance and I had such a great time. I mean, it was just like, we're cruise people now, you know, like, this is amazing. And the cool thing was, you know, the first show we're playing on top of the ship, you know, on top of the deck, you know, and I'm like,
yeah.
And I remember playing, and I'm like, you know, my bass is it's just super heavy, and I'm like, this is awesome, right? And all of a sudden, I started thinking, I'm like, man, there's fish underneath me. There's sharks. There's what, like, I can't believe we're playing in the middle of the ocean. This is wild. I played in sheds. I played in basements. I played in garages. I played in, bless you, I played in
VFW halls.
VFW halls, to arenas, to whatever. There's nothing like playing on the top of a ship with the wind blowing like crazy.
Oh wow.
It was just amazing, you know.
That's
unbelievable.
awesome.
But that was then, and I mean, my fiance would tell you. She said, you know, I hit the buffet like a lot. I was like, this is. I mean, you know, I was nonstop. Like, in fact, one night we were the first, like, maybe it was the first night or something. We were walking towards the top of the deck or to go outside, and the buffet area was like to the right over here.
Mm-hmm.
And she's walking, and I'm like walking next to her, and all of a sudden she's going left towards the deck, and I go into the right. I take a beeline right to the buffet. She's like, we just ate. I go, I know, I just want to see what they got. She's like, get the hell out of go. Let's get we're gonna go watch somebody. I think somebody else was playing or whatever. But
Well, how long did that last? And did you guys play every night of the cruise?
we played the first night. We played the second night in the theater, which was another crazy experience because it was the theater's in the bow of the ship, right? So you're sitting on the stage, and like when you're playing, like at one, I don't know if it was the first show or the second. Plus, I was drinking. We were drinking like crazy. Just, you know, it was free beer, free drinks. I mean, we were just having a party. We just got engaged. It was a blast. So I'm having a couple drinks, enjoying everything, right? But the one, I don't know if it was the first night on the theater, or the last night we played was Halloween night. But it was the I'm looking at the crowd, and when you're playing, you just feel like, you know, you could feel the ship hitting the waves, like, but not hard, but just enough. You could feel the move. You've been on a cruise ship?
I have not. No,
I was never on one either. So yeah, but go ahead. What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say I've been told that, you know, if it's not like crazy tumultuous waters, like, you just feel kind of a little bit of movement and a little bit of disorientation. So that's going on while you're playing.
So I'm looking at the crowd, right? And I'm looking at the crowd, and I'm just like this. I can feel the boat moving, and I see the crowd moving with me, and I'm like, for about 2 seconds as we're playing, I'm like, oh God, I'm starting to feel nauseous, right?
Yeah.
And then I was like, I looked away, and I was like, oh, it's fine. But that was it. That was the only time I had any issues with any of that. But it was just one little brief second of nausea. But the whole time, like, I mean, the only time that I actually felt the cruise ship, it was one of the last nights, I think, when we were actually hauling ass to get back to port. And we must have been flying. I don't know how fast we were going, but I woke up, and I woke up, and I was like, oh my God. I was like, and I put me right back to sleep. I went right to sleep. It was beautiful. Like, it was great sleep, actually. Like, I was like, wow. So, but yeah, it was definitely one of the coolest experiences. In fact, I was playing blackjack with I think I was playing with Willie, I don't know, it was Willie. I forget who was at the table, but we're playing blackjack, and I said, "Dude, tell the captain there's a port in Richmond, Virginia. Have him drive this ship straight up there. We don't need to go to Miami. Just drive you guys home." And he starts laughing. He's like, "Oh man," I go, "I'm having the best time. This is so fun, dude." I go, I didn't want it to end. It was that fun.
Are you guys going to do it again?
If I tell you one thing right now, I would love to do that again. I mean, they already have. They make the announcement on the last day of the cruise for the next cruise.
Okay.
So so we found out all the bands that were going to be on there for next year. So, but yeah, I mean, shit, dude, my fiance and I were already thinking about we're like, let's just go do that again. It was that much fun, So we would just love to be on a cruise again,
Yeah. And to kind of go back to some of the previous history of the band, you had left the band for a minute, is that correct?
Well, I left the band probably 2010, and then I think we started playing shows again. And I think it was 2017, so about 7 years.
Okay.
Definitely more than a minute.
They ran for a few years after you, though, correct?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure, but I think they did two records after.
Okay.
But the cool thing is, it's like we definitely left on bad terms. Like my singer and there's a lot more detail than that, but like we're so close now, it's amazing. But like,
yeah,
I was not a happy person when I left. I was just like, oh, it just didn't end. There was a lot of stuff that just didn't end the way I thought it should have or whatever when I left. But we're tight as hell now. Like, I mean, dude, it's like we're brothers. We've been through so much stuff together.
right.
But the thing is, once we started getting back together, I was like, man, it's better that we took a break for all those years. And it's funny now because I really didn't listen to any of the songs after I left. I tried to listen. I was too upset about it. I didn't want to listen to it that much. But it's funny because now we play one of those songs. It's called the record. I can't think of the record it's on. But anyways, we played the song, and it's like I love playing that song now. It's like nice. I need to play it all the time. It's like my favorite song to play. One of my favorite songs to play now. So, and it's the funny thing is, it's like, a lot of bands go through some drama and they go through all this crazy stuff, and it's like, we all grew up together. Like we grew up families and all this stuff now, kids, and it's like it's so much more fun as adults, and everyone has their own careers and all that stuff now and doing whatever. But it's like when we get together, it's 100 million% fun. Like there's nothing more. It's like it's a good escape now where I've lived my whole life getting to the point to try to get to that level. You know what I'm saying? Trying to get to that point. And now it's more, it's like it's reversed. It's like now I'm working for a living and doing all that. And all this stuff now is pure enjoyment.
That's awesome, man. And like what you were saying about, kind of taking a break. When you're in a band, it's like, and I've myself and guests have analogized this many times. It's like you're in a marriage with like 4, in your case, 5 other people.
Yeah.
And so it becomes one of those things where you're dealing with a bunch of different personalities and you're trying to, read each other and figure out everybody's quirks and, what they like, what pisses them off, and, sometimes like, a lot of my old bandmates in previous projects, I had the worst relationship with them on the exit. Now that I don't play with them, I love those guys, and it's like we can be friends again, and there's still some that kind of harbor animosity towards me, but en masse, it's pretty copacetic, and I think that is because there was that time to be able to kind of decompress from everything and just do something different. And you had mentioned that you are a barber, and like, how did you get involved in that, and what kind of motivated you into that career path?
Well, it was either barbering or jail. So, I mean, that's pretty much, no, I'm just kidding. That's a joke. That's a barber joke. 2026, I believe, will be 100 years that someone in my family has had a barber license in the state of Ohio. So my grandfather, my great uncle, tons of my cousins were all barbers, In fact, the barber college that I went to, the guy that owned that barber college, my grandfather got him into barbering.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, it's a whole big, it's a family thing. And in fact, when I went to go get my license for the barbershop that I opened up in 2018, I called the state board and I said, hey, I'm opening up a barbershop here, and my name is James Lamarca, and they go, what? Lamarca? Which one are you? Which barber? I mean, I go, because they know we got tons of family that are barbers, so they know all of us,
Yeah.
So it's a very I was to go back to initially how I started was I was welding in high school, and my dad told me if you're not going to go to college, you got to get a job. You got to like that whole thing, and I
Yeah.
said, all right, well I'm going to go weld, because my friends were welding, and I'm like, you can smoke cigarettes in there in the little thing, I was like, I liked the art of welding. I didn't like working as a welder. It was just not my
Sure.
thing, welding was cool. It's a cool thing to do. But I quit the job that I had, and my dad's like, why don't you just go to barber college? I'm like, okay. I was 19 years old, and he's like, I was smart enough to listen to my father at that age, like kids at that age are just like, I know everything. I know the world. Like, I just knew that I had to listen to my father, and I was like, he's like, go to barber college. And I got my license, and but it took about a year, and then I got my license. It was a very, it definitely helped me out to provide myself with money to buy equipment and upgrade any type of instrument that I had at the time. And, I was like, okay, this is cool. Like I can, my dad said, stay away from Best Buy. That's going to, cause I used to buy my CDs and all that stuff from there. He's like, it costs, every time you walk in there, it costs you $100. I go, yeah, I know. But, it's like, I needed all that music, but I saved all those CDs and never got rid of them. But,
That's
you
good.
just kind of, you're like, okay, I'm going to go do this and gonna, try to figure out, I, my dad always said there's a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. Okay. So have your job. You love playing music. That's great. That's your passion. That's great. Go ahead, do it. But you're going to do so. You're going to make money. You ain't living here.
Yeah.
You're going to be out on your own,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I had to figure that out real quick,
Yeah. And you mentioned, and we had talked before that you were saying that you get to kind of talk to a lot of people. Like who are some of like your clients? Like what are they, like real interesting people? What's kind of the demographic of people? You
It's a
said you've
bar.
got like older people and
Yeah. I mean, I mean, it's a pretty busy shop. I mean, we have 7 chairs, and I think I have 11 employees, including myself. As there's 11 of us, and we have we're open 6 days a week, and basically you have kids, first haircuts, the teenage kids that get these the what do you call it, the hairdo on the top,
top
the
knot.
what are those animals called? Those
I don't know. I'm drawing a
alpaca.
blank. Alpaca.
You know what an alpaca look? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
kids, I tell
Definitely.
you what, it took me a little while to figure out those haircuts, because it's like they keep it longer up here in the front. When I first started cutting hair, they were keeping it longer in the back at the mullets, So
Mullet. Yeah.
now I'm doing it's like a reverse mullet, and they're all these kids. And then the
That's kind
best
of how
thing,
mine is.
yeah. There you go.
It's like longer in the front and yeah.
Yeah, but these kids get perms on the top too, so
Oh,
you know.
Jesus.
Oh yeah, I mean you've seen that look, right? It's all bushy up here. But the funny thing is about that haircut, like, I tell these kids get mullets now too. It's great. So, but
That's
you got
wild.
businessmen. I got businessmen, insurance guys, just lawyers. You name it. It's all walks of life, And that's the cool thing about a barber shop is when when you're cutting hair and you got one customer, you're talking about one thing, and then the next guy you're talking about something else. And I
Yeah.
always say this too when you're cutting somebody's hair. They're in their chair. You got to listen to them. But I'm getting old enough now that they're gonna listen to me now. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna, you don't
Or
want
you'll
to see
give them,
my chair, go
or
to
you'll fuck
somebody
their
else.
haircut up.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, I cut your ear, give you a little slice on the ear.
Has that ever happened at your shop? Has anybody like popped off to any of the people there and then they would like fuck up their hair out of spite? Or maybe not your shop specifically, but like, have you ever known anybody to do that?
That's not the barbers probably wouldn't do that only because of the fact that like you don't want that negative, you don't want that,
Feedback.
yeah, because mistakes happen. People, when you got to do a razor part line, you know, you're putting a razor on somebody's head, like you gotta, you
Yeah.
gotta make it look. Sometimes these kids want them, and it's like, you gotta hold the kid's head down and carve that line in there.
Yeah.
You don't. If he's moving all around, it's like I tell him I can't do this. His kid's moving too much, But
Yeah. Yeah.
most of the people are pretty good. You know what I mean? Like, most of the kids, I should say, like with that kind of stuff. But you're not like if somebody. I remember a long time ago, this customer, he, it was when people were reading newspapers, and he's sitting in a chair. I'm like, so hey, how's your day going? He's like, it's good, it's fine. And he just picked the
Couldn't be
newspaper up,
bothered.
and I was like, you know what? It's whatever. I've been so many places, and I've done so many things with the band that those type of attitudes, those people that have that type of attitude, I don't need that type of your ego. I'm not gonna you can't pull that shit with me anymore. When I was a
Right.
kid, you could pull that stuff, and I'd be like, okay, shut up. I'm like, this guy's an asshole. Well, now I don't need that kind of attitude. You know what I mean? I don't.
Sure.
I enjoy cutting hair, and I want to enjoy the person that's in my chair. And I just ran into a customer. I went to the grocery store today, and I ran into a customer, and his son's in a wheelchair, and his son loves his shop. He can barely speak, but the nicest guy. The father brings him in here. I always take care of him. We always help the guy into the chair. I told him, like, call me if you ever need to, before you get here. Like, that customer service thing is such a massive, it's such a massive part of this business that, like, I see a lot of these people that do these crazy fades, and they all this shit. It's like, that's not the barber business. That how I was raised in it. The
Sure.
barber business, you take care of the customer and you make sure that they're happy no matter what, And you get some people that are assholes, like, you're like, whatever. But you know what? At the same time, I walk away. I had a couple times where, I'm like, I got this one customer, just, he's like, this guy had long hair, never gets his hair cut. He brings an ad that I had when I first opened a barber shop. He's like, the guy who works for me goes, hey, do you think this guy says he's got a coupon? I go, coupon? I go, we don't do coupons anymore. The story it's kind of funny, but he goes, I got this coupon. I go, it's not a coupon, sir. It's an ad that when we first opened, for a $12 haircut for an early bird special. He goes, you're not going to honor that? I go, it's an ad. And he took the coupon and he threw it at me. I said, okay. I just walk away. I'm like, dude, whatever, bro. Like,
Yeah.
whatever, dude.
Wow.
And he got mad, and he couldn't even throw it because it was a piece of paper, and it fell on his leg, and he had to pick it up. He looked so stupid. I was like, you just embarrass yourself. You're never walking in here again. So,
Wow.
whatever.
How about that? Yeah, that's crazy. And
Yeah.
you mentioned the razor fades. Why, like, North Carolina doesn't allow razor fades? Why
Well,
is
then
that? Why did certain?
I would never work at a barber shop in North Carolina then.
But why would they do that though?
Because
What's the impetus for that?
Can I tell you why?
Sure.
Well, the state board, I don't know the laws in your state, but if the state board doesn't allow it, it's kind of bullshit,
But for what reason though? Like
because back in the 80s, my uncle actually was on the local news here back in the 80s because there was a scare that, the blood could transfer, you can get AIDS, from, but all our stuff is sterilized. I mean, it's like, it's such a bullshit thing that they don't, no people do their straight razor shaves. Like it's bullshit, like there's no, like our sterilizing solution kills any germs, bacteria, fungus, any of that stuff. It dies the minute it goes into that solution.
right.
It's all sterilized. Right. You're not going to get any infections,
Well,
or diseases.
When I was in LA, I used to be able to get the razor fade and the hard part, and I did it in West Hollywood. I mean, shit, you want to talk about the risk of getting AIDS? Like, there it was right there, Right. But it was like the most amazing haircuts I ever had, and they don't do it here. And I was always wondering, like, why
there's shops that won't do it in Cleveland. Like, I would say that some shops don't do it. That's just because they're lazy. They don't want to do it because they're just, like, they don't do it because, well, actually, it's kind of an interesting thing because a lot of barbers, I should say a lot of barber shops now, have a lot of cosmetologists. I actually have a lot of cosmetologists that work for me. So that being said, our laws have gotten a little bit more lax with the razor for them, but they're not allowed to shave the face. They can't do. They can do. Like, I actually had to talk to the lawyer for the state to, find out where the cosmetologists were allowed. They can do like this line on the beard,
Yeah.
but they can't shave any of this down.
Oh.
That they're not allowed to. That's the difference between a barber and a beautician, I guess you would say. But at the end of the day, they could do pretty much the razor phase. They could take their razor, but they're only allowed to have a certain razor that has a guard on it. So our razors don't have a guard, theirs do. It's the same thing, but like if let's just say you were to cut somebody, it wouldn't go as deep as ours, I guess.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But
it's all specific. In fact, I think the state of Louisiana is the only state you don't have to have a barber's license to open up a barber shop. Like in Vegas, you have to take a test out there. You have to go through school or something like that in Nevada. I mean, each state has their own different rules and whatnot,
Sure.
And COVID, when COVID hit, that was the funny thing. I always tell this story about that. Like when COVID hit, when we reopened, my business partner's shop in another suburb city, a guy came in there, and it was like right when they reopened, and he was like saying, like, he goes, he's like, why is this kid taking his mask off? He's like, he's getting a beard trim, sir. He's like, well, that's crazy. Like, why is he taking his mask off? The guy gets in the chair and he goes, can I get a beard trim? So people were it was just such a stupid time. Like, and I always, it was a stupid time when it came down to, people that were like, like trying to call the COVID police on you.
Yeah.
The only thing that I did, I followed when they shut everything down. I said, I'm not getting my hair cut. I'm not opening up my shop, and I know a lot of shops that did, and I will never do that again. If they even try to shut down ever, if they would ever try to do something like that again, I wouldn't shut down. I'd be like, yeah, whatever.
I think you'd be in the majority at this point.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I think people in their right minds would be like, well, why were certain people like, firemen had to get haircuts because their equipment has to go on their head. So I know
Nancy Pelosi had to get her hair cut.
Yeah. Yeah, that pissed me off too when she got her, and the lady in Texas that had there was a lady in Texas that had a beauty shop and they tried to shut her down and all that stuff. I'm like, that's so stupid. We had no incidences because the thing about my shop, it's a massive shop. It's big. So we had our chairs head to head were 9 feet. So we passed that 6 feet bullshit thing, So everyone, we never had to like my business partner, his shop, they had to they went from 5 chairs to 4 chairs because of that, that situation. Yeah, you're losing money. You're losing money. It was for those, Fauci rules, And to be honest with you, nowadays it's like you're not going to have that. I mean, that kind of situation. Like, okay, well, all that for what? People lost a lot of money that way.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's stupid, man. Got a question here for you. It's Trivik Ram, the bass player of 108. What's going on, dude? It says, do you use distortion on your bass or prefer a clean tone? What is your bass? What pedals do you use, if any? What bassist did you love growing up and love nowadays too? What is your favorite bass?
Keep that up there so I can read that as you're asking. Okay,
yeah,
so
absolutely.
I use a distortion in some songs. We'll go through our set list and I'll we have a song This Present Darkness, one of our songs, for the bass solo part. I'll definitely what do you call it? I use I beef it up with a little bit of distortion, but a clean tone, I wouldn't call it a clean tone per se. I use a Sans amp, and my Sans amp is what it's a preamp, so I get all my tones from there. I use that pedal. That's my main sound. So like if I'm not hitting that button, I'll hear it and I'm like, all of a sudden I hit that button. It's like, there you go. There's my sound, I've been using a Jackson bass. So if you go to my guitar player, Rob Arnold, it's called Rob Arnold World. And it's, I did a whole thing, with my gear that I've been using. So you can actually see all my pedals. And I traded haircuts for him and his son, and he bought a Jackson, Dave Ellison bass. And, he gave that to me, so for free haircuts for life. So him and his son.
Wow.
So I use that bass now. It's a Jackson, and I'll tell you what. I played ESPs. I played Ibanez's. I played Music Man's. All those types of basses. And to be honest with you, the Jackson for Chimaira I should have been playing them years ago. It's such a great bass. I use a Sans amp. I use a like the I can't think of the name of the distortion pedal, but it's an old metal like distortion pedal. It's pretty sweet. A tuner and then a wireless. But I got a new pedal. It's called the Pitchfork. So now
I'm gonna grab something. Hang on one sec. Keep talking.
so my pitchfork pedal, my guitar player and I, we did a video about it. You take the pedal, you hit, you dial in the tuning, and I can do three different tunings. I can do A songs, C tuning, which is our normal tuning, and then what's the other tuning we use? A, B, and C tunings. So
That's
we
awesome.
have three different tunings, and I hit that pedal. Sometimes you got to hit it to the next channel. It's all programmed, so I only have to use one guitar.
Got one of these.
Oh yeah.
I also got one of these too.
What's that? I can't see that one. What is it?
That is the Alpha Omega Ultra. It's got all sorts of settings on it. It's wild.
Yeah. Now you use that for what?
It's for bass.
For bass.
Yeah, like overdrive. I love a dirty bass, man. I love a distorted, like just muddy sounding bass. There's just something about it, especially with like a lot of like treble on it too. I love it.
You know what's funny? I did that thing, and if you listen to Rob's interview with our sound guy, he towards the end of the sound guys his interview, he talks about how I was telling him that on the top of the ship, like when we were playing on the cruise ship, my bass all of a sudden was like super loud through all the monitors and all that stuff like that, and I'm like, it's just overpowering. And I went to my bass and I turned it down. I turned the volume down because I knew that Big John would be able to, that sound guy. I said, I know that he would be able to just basically, I have faith in him. If I turn my stuff down, because we're playing on the ship, the wind's blowing. It's like, it was crazy, sound was just kind of blowing all over the place. And I'm like, all of a sudden it's just my bass is like super loud. I'm like, I went and turned it down. I was like, well, let him, he'll mess with it,
Yeah. What basses did you love growing up and nowadays?
Music Man's was my favorite bass I ever played. I have a couple Music Man's, but they need a lot of work done to them.
Oh, I think he means bassists, like actual players.
Bassists.
Yeah.
So, yeah. What's it called? Gene Simmons is one of my favorite bass players, just because of his persona and all that. He's like actually a really good bass player too. If you really listen to his bass lines, they're very, very bluesy, very melodic. It's very, very, very much, the rhythm of that band. It's really, he's awesome. I always grew up listening to Flea. I love Red Hot Chili Peppers. Michael Anthony is probably one of my favorite bass players. I was probably the first bass player. I was like, oh, that dude's awesome. From Van Halen. He's just in the pocket like that. That's the type of bass player I was like. That's how I play, is like a Michael Anthony style. That's how I want. Not as good as he is, but definitely like that style. Just he's pounding.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And yeah, you mentioned your favorite bass. I want to go ahead and be on record and say, Triv, your bass on A New Beat from a Dead Heart, I think is some of the best bass tone I've ever heard. It's fucking incredible. So I'm gonna have to
get at you.
Yeah. It's incredible recording. He also says favorite instrument of all time. I'm guessing bass.
Well, wait, that's a kind of weird question. A favorite instrument of all time? I wish I was a drummer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, drums are
Me too.
Drums are the best. I wish I could play drums as good as some of the drummers I've played with and some of the drummers I've seen play. So
I'd have started 20 bands by now if I could play drums.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Let's see here. Do you like to play bass best or guitar or other instruments? Yeah. Do you play guitar or?
I wish I could play piano better. I wish I was a better piano player. I started off playing guitar, so that was kind of I'm just I don't know, I could play Metallica songs back in the day, and I switched to playing bass, and the guitar stuff is very, I wish I could play guitar like Eddie Van Halen. So yeah, but I'm not ever going to be like that. So yeah, other instruments, yeah, piano would be the one I wish I could play better. I wish I would be able to play that. I wish I could read music to play piano. So
sure.
I don't know how to read music. So
now, Chimaira is back, and what was kind of the impetus for coming back?
Well, playing like we did. So we've always played like a Christmas show.
Hmm.
We did annual Christmas shows, and then the first reunion show after the 7 years of being apart, was a Christmas show. We put the band back together, for the Christmas show, and then we did. COVID hit, and then we didn't do anything. We were supposed to do something, and we did the 20th anniversary Impossibility shows. It was 2 shows, and then after those 2 shows, it was like, man, all these people were like, man, you guys got to play and all this stuff. So it was basically the people wanting us to play, and like we're kind of a nostalgic type of band now, and it's like you're not nostalgic, but our era of music is nostalgic now. So it's like, we're wanted to play these festivals and like all this stuff, and it's like we have to turn down a lot of stuff because people have kids, and kids are a pain in the ass and all that stuff. Oh, sorry. But yeah, he's patiently waiting for dinner right now. So
that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, I'll field you a few more questions. Like I always like to ask this question. What do you like watching? What are you listening to? Like I'm a big movie and TV guy, so I always get to hear like what people are into as far as that's concerned.
I like playing video games. My son and we like playing with video games.
Madden.
Yeah.
Nice.
Like what's movies? I like, man, I'll tell you, I'm kind of boring. I like to watch older movies that I've watched probably 15 million times.
Oh, me too.
I like to watch the movie 2012. You ever watch that one?
I love that movie.
I've never seen it.
Yeah, my singer Mark always makes fun of me. He's like, "You like that movie?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's a good movie."
I know it's Roland Emmerich who did like Independence Day and stuff.
Oh, I love Independence Day too.
Oh no, it wouldn't be my first choice, but I always give everything a fair shake, and sometimes I'm surprised. Like I don't like Michael Bay, but somebody told me to watch one of his albums, The Island, and I ended up really enjoying it. And The Rock is kind of a guilty pleasure of mine. So 2012, I'll have to check it out.
It's just what it is. It's like I'll put on like if I like in the summertime, like around 4th of July, I'll put on Independence Day. I put it on by the time the aliens come down, I'm already sleeping. You know what I mean? Because the movie. I think I saw something recently said why you like movies like that. Why you watch movies because you know the ending, and it's kind of like it eases your mind into it.
Yeah.
I definitely do a lot. I'll be honest with you. I mean, like reading wise or any like I don't read a lot of books, but I read a lot of stuff. I shouldn't say I read a lot of stuff on Twitter, but I read a lot of articles on Twitter or X, if you will, X.
Yeah. Yeah, there you
go. I like reading a lot of different, I guess you could say, opinion pieces, and a lot of these different. I mean, from both sides of the fence, I like to read them because you read something like that, and you read someone's opinion based thing, and then you start reading the comments. You're like, idiot. Oh, this guy's got a good point.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where you kind of just like you kind of get the gist of everything by kind of doing your own kind of research on things, and I think that's the only thing that really interests me. I think I wouldn't say pop culture, but everything that's going on politically right now, I'm 100% into. Like I love. Ever since I've been a kid, I've always been kind of not involved, but enthralled with politics.
Yeah.
Because
same.
It's kind of like especially when you start touring all over the world and you start playing all these countries. Like, we played in Dubai, and I remember meeting this dude from Iran. And he's like, Jim. I'm like, hey, what's up, dude? He's like, dude, your band, man. You guys got to come to Iran. I'm like, dude, your country doesn't like my country, bro. He's like, no. We love Americans. We don't love. It's our government. I go, yeah, you're right. These governments are fucking idiots. They're all stupid,
I got invited to go to Cuba by my Hare Krishna guru, who was Canadian, and he was like, I don't know if they're going to let you over there. And I was like, yeah, probably not, but I'm with you on the political stuff. And I will say this, anybody that's just doing surface level investigation of what's going on in Los Angeles right now, dig a little bit deeper. You're going to get some different answers. That's all I'm going to say on that.
And that's the thing. At the end of the day, it's like, all I could say is like the first time when all that stuff happened, and this is what I tell people at the barber shop. I said, when you watch these, listen, Fox News, CNN, they're all the same. I have a few people that I do enjoy watching on Fox.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody. I think there's a lot of them that are idiots. Yeah. But I do have a couple people that I enjoy. I like Greg Gutfeld. That's like one of my favorite dudes. He's so good.
Kat Timpf, man, that's my girl right there.
Yes, they're. You know what it is? It's entertainment. You gotta see. That's the thing people don't understand. You watch that stuff, it's entertainment. If you're watching CNN and MSNBC and Fox, and you're not watching it as entertainment, That's the
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
It's entertainment. It's TV.
It's all about independent journalism nowadays.
Well, yeah. I mean, look at this last election. I mean, if you really want to talk about, not talk about it, but like this last election, what the mainstream news media, the TV media, when I used to come home, we had to stop playing video games. Like my dad would come home from work at 6 o'clock from work, and we'd have to stop playing video games because my dad wanted to watch the news, so he had to watch the
Yeah.
news. And I asked him
Mhm.
questions about it. That guy's an idiot. Okay, Dad. So you had to figure out stuff. That's
Yeah.
what I'm doing now. If you're watching the news and getting that information from the news and saying that's the word, then you're stupid. Sorry.
Right.
I'm
Well,
sorry.
and you can't just use one source of information,
Right.
like and one thing that I've learned too is, of course there's sources that I definitely trust for my news and for my information, but they may not always be right about
Of
something.
course
And
they're
so
not.
you got to
Yeah.
you like I've people have had some hot takes before that I just flat out disagreed with. I was like, "No, I don't fucking agree with that at all." Like,
Here's the
I'm
thing. At the
sorry.
end of the
Like,
day, I look at people's Facebook posts, and when somebody you could be a Trump supporter, or you could be, I mean, I don't know how many. I mean, a Biden supporter, or whatever you want to call that whole that situation. But you could
right.
take those people, both those sides of fence, and these people that push that stuff out there. There's 2 likes. Okay, you have
Yeah.
2 likes. When you post a picture of you and your kid,
Oh,
it's 150 likes. What don't you get?
yeah.
What don't
Yeah,
you get?
it's so
Nobody
different.
cares about your opinion.
Yeah.
You're not going to change anybody's mind.
Yeah.
So quit doing that stuff and quit telling everybody they got to do it this way, because I'm not going to change. I'm 50 years old.
Yeah.
Because you say this, because you have that opinion, doesn't mean I'm going to change my mind. And then what I
True.
was going to say is right off the rip with the fires in Los Angeles, okay? Right off the rip, they were showing containment, like the fire containment. I'm like, why do they got a number on there? Did they pre-plan this?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. I mean, I'm just being a realist, okay? At the end of
Yeah.
the day, when you watch that kind of stuff like that, it's just like, why would you put that number on there like that? Like,
Right.
it's like same thing with COVID. They put those numbers on there. Like, now you got to watch the news because they want to suck you in to watch it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
all.
Well,
Just
and the
be
fact
smarter
that
than
it's
that's
only
all.
the fact that it's only 50% contained at this point is wild to me. It's like
Yeah.
one of the wealthiest cities in the country. Were supposed to have some of the resources to be at their disposal to fight this stuff. Yet it's still going on, and
Yeah.
there's still all this like fuckery and just like unanswered questions and stuff. And I'm like, this is
I feel bad
all
for
the
the
dots are
people.
not connecting.
I see. Here's the thing, like people say conspiracy theories and this and that. I tell you one thing right now, it's not called conspiracy theories anymore. It's called spoiler alerts. Okay.
True. Yes.
So
Spoiler
yeah,
alerts.
because
Yeah.
here's at the end of the day, it's like, so this fire. The one luxury that I have being a barber is I have firemen that come into my barber shop. I ask them questions.
Yeah.
I have a fear of flying. I talk to my pilots about flying. You know what I'm saying? Like, I
Right.
get my own resource information. Okay.
From
When I had to do
people that are
reports,
actually involved. Yeah.
right. When I did reports back in the day, I had to do it on encyclopedias. These kids Google everything. Oh, so now Google's the truth? Come on. See, that's all I'm saying. Like, you got to be smarter than that, or you're just going to be sucked into that bullshit.
Well, and consider too, like, when you did have an encyclopedia, I mean, I had them too, when it's like that's one source, now you've got the internet to where it's like a multitude of sources, so in that way, I think it's better for this generation to be able to access information. The problem is just they may not do it because they hear something that kind of confirms their own bias, and then they're just like, I'm just going to run with that, I'm just going to go with that, I'm not going to
Yeah.
look anywhere else.
Yeah, man,
Yeah.
that's just. I mean, the thing is, it's like, well, then you can't lecture people if you just have one source of information.
Right.
Right. Basically, back in the day, you had an encyclopedia. You read the information. You're like, okay, I wrote a report on this. Now you have AI. So guess what? I wish I had that technology when I was a kid.
No shit.
I'd be a doctor right now. I would have used AI to cheat all the way through. Because you know
Oh
what?
god, yes.
You go to a doctor's office, it's like, he's like, oh yeah, you're fine. You go to a dentist, the guy's like, you're fine. I'm like, everybody else is doing the work.
Right.
Like, what are you talking
Yeah.
about? Like, I mean, I'm just bullshitting here, but yeah.
Right.
So,
I was gonna say, if anybody did that to get a doctor, like a PhD or something, I don't know if I'd go to that doctor.
well, I'm telling you, I tell you what, right now, I mean, I don't think you could cheat your way through all that stuff, and I think
Right.
AI is a tool to use now. Like, I had a kid that worked for me, and he needed me to write a court thing to say that he worked there, and I'm like, dude, I don't know. What am I? I don't know this shit. I don't know any of this stuff. So that was the first time I ever used AI or whatever, Chat GPT. I used his name. I wrote it out. I was like, it was just like, that was awesome. I was like, whoa, this is great. Wrote out a whole thing. I'm like, dude, I go, this is insane. Like, I could really get into this. So it's that's the future. So I don't know.
People are doing it to write novels now. Like, it's
All I
crazy
can
to
tell
me.
people right now, if you want me to give you any advice, cryptocurrency might be taking off massively right now. Like
I would think so.
I think if you want to invest, and I always say this at the shop, I say, what's the difference between cryptocurrency, gambling at the casino, or the stock market? It's all the same.
It is.
It's all the same. Who controls that? No, not you. You just
Yeah.
put your money in. You hope you hit the freaking 3 cherries. You know what I mean? You're not.
Yeah.
It's all the same. But cryptocurrency right now, I mean, hey, I have a bunch of, not a ton of money invested into it, but enough that if one of them hits this thing, I'm cashing out.
Yeah.
And I'm taking my wife, my future wife, and we're gonna go. And I'll take my son with me too. But we're going on a 100-day cruise around the world.
I was gonna say, go on another cruise. You got to.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right. One question I want to ask you before we hop off here is, what's one piece of advice that you would give your younger self?
Don't. Yeah, I do a lot to him.
I'm his younger self, basically.
Take his advice. Take your
No,
dad's advice.
Yeah.
Besides
No,
the
trust
chair
me.
music.
Trust me. Your dad has lived all of it before. So if he
I'm-
tells you something, he loves you and he means well and he just wants to see the best for you
I'm
because
basically
you know.
a mini me.
Exactly.
A mini me. You're
I'm-
a mini me. No. To tell myself, like, what I would do is, like I said, I channel that through him, like my father did to me. But if I were to tell myself, I would probably go back and say, take money and put it away a little bit more than what I did later on. I would have probably, but the thing is, the problem is, I gave up a lot of that stuff and took a lot of money that I actually saved back then and spent it because we were trying to make the band. And
Right.
all the money I saved went away, and 9/11 hit, and that sucked too. So whatever, So what I would say to my younger self is, try to put some money away and just don't even touch it.
Yeah,
That's
that's
all
hard.
It's terrible. It's not easy.
You give me some money, I'm off to the races, man.
Yeah. I got 5.6 million shares of whatever one cryptocurrency thing. I go, if it hits $1, I'm just taking that money. I'm running. That's it.
Yeah.
I'll still work. I mean, I'll still do everything. I'll still do all the stuff I'm doing, but that's it. I got that cushion.
Exactly. Is there anyone you want to shout out before we dip off here? Like any bands, any individuals that we haven't mentioned already, or if you want to hit us with them again?
I wish the people could see the group Instagram group that I'm in with a couple good friends. My keyboard player and Ken Susi from Unearthed. Yeah. It's just, we always send the best memes to each other. I wish you guys could see that. But people are too soft these days, so I can't see that stuff.
I hear you. You
Other
should
than
see.
that, I mean, all the bands that we've been friends with for over the years, I mean, they know we love them all, and we're so glad we're back out on the scene, and now we're playing shows with them. It's amazing to be into that stuff again and seeing everybody. So yeah, I'm very happy, and it's awesome. And when we played that Incarceration Fest, I kind of run the backstage. I'm kind of the mayor of the backstage. My fiance was saying,
Nice.
she goes, everybody. She goes, it's just like, I go, yeah. I go, so, it was very cool, to get back in that whole thing again. It's awesome.
Sure.
I love it.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, I'm really stoked for you. And you seem like a really affable guy, man, and I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Well, thank you. Me too.
I wish you all the best with what you're doing with your barbershop and with Chimaira. And dude, I think this is awesome. We'll have to definitely reconnect again. And
do you do multiple people one?
I've done 2 at a time before, but usually it's hard as far as on this platform because there's a lot of crosstalk and you don't want to but I've done it before. So yeah, if you ever want to come back on and bring some other people
Joe,
on,
just because of Joe, because he's the he got us hooked up.
Oh yeah,
so.
we'll get Joe on here. That
Joe's
would be
a good
fun,
guy. Yeah, he's a good guy, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I want to thank him again for setting this up because, like I said, this has been fantastic, man. And if you don't mind just hanging out for a few minutes,
Yes,
just
sir.
doing like a quick post game, and then one thing I want to, like I said, promote. I always do this at the beginning of the hour. Hell's Heart Merch Co. Go to hellsheartco.bigcartel.com. Use the code 20 for 20% off your entire order. I'm going to throw up some samples here real quick. We've got our little Bullet, if you ever seen the Steve McQueen movie Bullet, we've got that. Our little Black Flag mock right there. From Psycho 2, we got that one. Scream, Tatum Glow in the Dark. And then we've got the Randy from Scream 2, Glow in the Dark. So check that out. They're really
Nice.
high quality Bella Canvas t-shirts. They feel amazing. Tri-blend, 50% polyester, 25% cotton, 25% rayon. Go check that out. And if you would please, and we're going to put all the links down to, I mean, I don't know that you need the help because everybody knows who you guys are. But I'll put all the links to Chimaira down there in the comments section. Give them a follow on Instagram, follow them on Spotify. Please support them. They're fucking awesome.
I always promote the band. I always tell kids that come into barbershop, these young kids, you know, they don't know who our band is. I'm like, hey, you got Spotify? Yeah, here, check this out. You work out? Yeah, go listen to this shit. You know, like
one question I want to ask you real quick. Do you ever have people come in the shop that do, or you tell them what you do, that you tell them that you're in Chimaira and they're like, holy shit.
So this is a funny story. It happened at Incarceration Fest this summer. This guy that comes in the barbershop, he doesn't go to me, but he goes to one of my business partners. It's his client. And his wife is a state trooper in Ohio here, you know, in Northeast Ohio. She loves the band. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They went to Incarceration Festival. I'm on the big screen, right?
Yeah.
He wants to go see that band. You know, she wants to go see us play. We're going to go see them play right now. We got to go, whatever, right? I guess he's like, that's the guy that owns the barbershop I go to. She goes, he owns the bar. You know what I'm saying? It was just kind of a weird, you know what I'm saying? Like, she's like, how do you know? She's like, that's the guy that owns the barbershop. He's like, he's in that band.
Wild.
You know, there's like kind of a whole weird story, you know?
That's
it
wild.
happens a lot. I get a lot of people come in, you know, that know the band, and it's cool. I mean, you know, it's a cool vibe, you know.
Absolutely,
go check out
man.
the barbershop, sidells.com. Go there and check it out.
Yeah.
You could check out, you know, like our barbershop, and you know, just Google SIEDELS.com or Sidells Barbershop and go check out the pictures. There's a lot of cool stuff up there, you know.
Hell yeah. I'll post the links on there, and anybody that's
Perfect.
up in the area, please support Jim and go get a haircut up there. I'm sure it's a great haircut. I love going to a barbershop to get my haircut. I will not go to Great Clips or any of those places.
No.
I will not let women touch my hair anymore. I won't. I ain't gonna do it.
I do have some good women that cut hair though, but you know, they're definitely, I get that. Some guys that they don't like that, and it's fine, you know. You get it.
I take that back. I had a woman haircut, woman barber when I was in LA, and she was actually pretty awesome. But en masse, like I don't go to like salons or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean that's a whole different vibe, you know.
Yeah, definitely. But well, everybody, I want to thank you guys for joining the stream, and anybody that fielded your questions. Like I said, like, comment, share, subscribe. Click on that bell for notifications if you're watching on YouTube, and if you're listening on Spotify, give us a follow. That would be fantastic. Once again, I want to thank my main man here, Jim Lamarca. I appreciate you, brother. This has been awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Namaste. God bless, and be good. See